In 2019, we began to build our dream.
But the journey started long before you were invited to watch.
We walked a path that spanned nearly 2 decades.
There were times of joy, pain, and everything in between.
Our lives have completely changed, and we're ready to tell you how it happened.
We're not holding back.
Our mistakes, regrets,
What we wish we could change, our best decisions.
and if we do it again, you'll hear it all.
Come back in time with us behind the camera and answer the question,
Is self-building worth it?
I'm watching this in January 21, and I don't understand why this video has not got over 1 million views. I have great admiration for your work ethic and your dad. That is a great family, and thank you for sharing. You're just pretty awesome. I would trade all my degrees to be as talented and fearless as you, but I would use the knowledge you have shared here to attempt a smaller build with my family. It's a really nice comment.
Nice.
Somebody said, but beware, in this moment of the construction, there's a great risk for the roof if a storm arrives, which we'll talk about that.
Oh, lots of things. The vulnerability of your structure at this point, sheathing, safety, equipment.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
All right, September 2nd.
All right, welcome back to Is Self-Building Worth It? Today's video is gonna be me putting on the roof metal by myself. So there's lots to talk about here. But before we get started, just a couple things to mention. If you guys wanna design a Barndominium, we can help you out with that. We have our own full design service, Back 40 Buildings. We do stick frame, steel frame, post frame. We have lots of stock plans. Check that out. We're making these plans better and better every day. But also we have a patron group. Emily, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Patreon is for those of you who are interested in learning more about DIY building, DIY contracting. If you are considering getting into post frame or Barndominium construction as a business, or just you really want to have a concrete knowledge of what goes into the build prior to hiring your own builder. We cover a lot of topics from design to specific questions. You can meet other people that are like-minded. You can connect with them geographically. There's a lot of people there in the same area. It's a good group. It's a combination of chats, lives, other resources that we offer exclusively to patrons.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely worth it.
Well, let's just start it.
All right, you can see behind me, I got my first piece of steel up. Went pretty good. Getting a little bit windier, but I'm gonna keep trying to go because I gotta get this done. I'm gonna put my second piece up there. I got my weather strip down. And I built this little platform to hold my steel up close to the roof. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag another piece up.
All right, so I can remember this day very vividly. I will say I wasn't really afraid, but there are lots of safety concerns here putting metal on your roof. I made this basket that would hold a sheet of metal. I did one sheet at a time. But I'm just gonna start out by saying we sheet all of our roofs with 1/2-inch OSB now. And there's many reasons for that. Mm-hmm. Not that this is wrong, you have plenty of shear value. So structurally, it's fine. However, the issues that you could have is with condensation on the underneath side. Even after you get your ceiling vapor barrier put in and all that, if you get extreme conditions, and this is mostly for people that live further north, if you get down into single digits and the humidity is just right, you can get some frost on the underneath side of your steel. Now, in 99% of the time, that frost is just gonna evaporate when the sun comes up and you're not gonna have issues. You probably won't ever have long-term issues, but you don't want any dripping at all up in your attic. So
Right. And the ones that we didn't put sheathing on, we did drip stop.
We did drip stop.
Yeah, so that held. So that's an option for some of you, but
here's the thing, I'm not saying drip stop's bad. It's good, it does what it's supposed to do, but how drip stop works is on the underneath side of the steel, when they're roll forming it, there is a layer, it's almost like a felt. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it absorbs the moisture. and then slowly releases it. So it's absorbing it and releasing it when it needs to, and it works. It keeps the ceiling from dripping. The thing that's nice about OSB is it gives you a lot of extra structural value. One thing that you will see if you start driving around and look at post frame buildings with no sheathing, you will be able to see where the purlins are. Whether your trusses are 8 foot on center, 4 foot on center with purlins flat, you're going to be able to see those lines, and there's just going to be a little bit of a indentation in between those, so you're going to be able to see where your purlins are. I never notice it on our house, but I don't like it when I do.
Right.
Another thing that you're going to encounter is any penetration through your roof, so venting, chimneys. You're going to add some kind of plywood there on the underneath after the fact to be able to screw your trims to get a good seal and keep it from leaking.
Right.
So it solves a lot of issues, and it makes it a lot easier putting your metal roof on.
Yeah. And boy, have we cycled through a lot since this video. So this was in September 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020. And so you had such a drastic price fluctuation in lumber materials. And so OSB went from, at this time, we were like, oh yeah, we're going to save the $3,000 it would have cost to buy OSB, because it was probably $11 a sheet, similar to what it is now. And then it went all the way up to like $50 a sheet. So it made a really big difference in that 2021 range with people into 2022. It really made a big difference in people's budget. And so that's why we didn't do it on all of them. But now that we
we 100% did drip stop.
Right. But now when it's back down in that teen price range, it's really worth it.
Yeah, it's like even my little building I just built down here, I put plywood on it.
Right.
It just makes it so much nicer. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and then if you're going to go with, we have a lot of clients that are leaning towards doing a spray foam roof system as well. Like then you have something you can just spray directly to the sheathing.
I would say if you're going to do an exposed fastener roof, my preferred method would be to sheet the roof and then use an ice and water barrier. If you're going to spray underneath, it needs to have permeable. It needs to air needs to be able to go through it. I think it's 6 perm or greater that it has to be, and they do make those. So it has to be high temp and it has to be permeable if you're going to spray foam underneath. And then what that stuff does is when you're running your screws through your steel, it self-heals around that screw. So even if your screw leaks over time, it's not going to get through that ice and water, and it's going to go out the eave of your building into your gutter. So would be the ultimate way to do it. But I guess that's the biggest thing about, just looking at this from a framing standpoint. The second thing is, if you're going to do this, you really need a safety harness. And you can see I have a safety line here, which would have kept me from falling all the way to the ground. However, this isn't like the ideal safety system here.
Mm-mm. No,
and
you would have still gotten pretty hurt.
And I had no lift. And I did this whole side of this roof by myself. I mean, look at this.
I get anxious just watching that. Like, I want to go throw up now.
I mean, I don't even know. You think that belt would have held me?
Oh my gosh, I mean, that is something.
I mean, you understand. I came from, worrying about getting shot to like, oh, I'm gonna carry this piece of steel up the roof. No big deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I asked him. I was like, well, is this scary? And he was like, well, in comparison
to kicking doors in.
Right, to getting shot at, it's not. So you just kind of keep going. But this is not for the faint of heart to do it this way.
I will say that the basket I made, I did one sheet at a time. I'd lift it up there, and then I would pull it up onto the roof, and it worked good.
Yeah.
But it was difficult. This is where a telehandler would make life so much easier. And I have little jigs and stuff now that really help me. Like, cause what I really struggled with the most is lining, like, cause I only could be at the top or the bottom. I can't be at both places. So I've created a jig now where I can screw it to the fascia board and it'll hold my steel even. And then I don't have to worry about being at the bottom and making sure that it's lined up.
Yeah, did you use your like cougar paws when you get to this building down here?
I did use those down there. I did not have cougar paws at this point, I don't think. No, I know I didn't, because I know when I put the steel on the porch, I was in bare feet, like in December, so I could stand on it. Yeah, cougar paws, they're a shoe that has a metal or a magnet inside the sole. And man, they make a big difference in being able to stand on the metal roof. I have a 512 roof pitch is about 412 or 512. You can stand on them pretty good. If you get into 612, it's getting really, really risky. And the colder it is, the harder it is to get traction on the metal, because the rubber on your shoes is hard, the metal's cold, and you just want to slide.
Yeah, which is why somebody asked us this the other day, if it made a difference in labor pricing. So at 612,
I increased my price.
right, there'd be more labor involved. So that's something to consider. And in time of year, I mean, it's a dance, because you don't want it to be like crazy hot that you can't stand it, and then you don't want it to be cold. But that's why, like, you don't see a lot of building crews going, even when the weather isn't terrible in the winter, that you're not seeing a bunch of stuff go up. We've managed to get ourselves in pickles every single winter where we have to push the limits, and you just increase your risk for accidents. And
well, it slows everything up.
Yeah, and it just takes it's not worth it, because it takes, you eat through all of your labor because it takes you so much longer.
I mean, last year, Justin, it was last year, we were melting ice and snow off the Sullivans to get their porch metalled.
Yeah, with a blowtorch.
With a blowtorch. So that's equally dumb. Yeah. But if you think about your structure, you get your structure framed up, and you want to get your roof metal on as soon as possible, because this is the most vulnerable your building will be, is in this state right here. If you get like high winds or something. So you want to make sure you have it strapped down good. I use chains now, which we have video that we can show you how we use toe straps and chains to lock our building into place. And we also utilize those to square it and everything.
Yeah, because so our house has been through the derecho, which was like an inland hurricane that came through Iowa in August of 2020. We've had a build, at least one of our builds, there's been a tornado that's gone close enough that it twisted it.
Oh yeah, it took me 2 days to straighten it back out.
Yeah, so.
Oh yeah, I had every piece of equipment. Was kind of getting concerned on how I was going to get home, because I had everything attached to the building to try to straighten it out.
Is that why you went ahead and did the roof metal on this before you start building the garage?
Yes. Okay. Because you get that roof metal all on there, and that's giving you your shear strength, so it's going to keep that roof from moving. It's just going to stiffen it up.
What if you would have OSB'd it? Would you have been okay
being
it and then going and framing up the garage?
Yeah. You would have definitely been fine if you get your OSB on, get it all nailed down, because that's going to give you your necessary shear. However, kind of my method is I frame up the building, square it up, I get my plywood, my OSB on the roof, and I get all my metal on the roof, the ridge on, all the trims, and then the roof's done. And then I don't have to get back up there. And that's kind of like that. The point of a build that I get really excited, because that's probably one of the hardest parts, is putting the roof metal up. I guess if you don't have all of the proper equipment.
Right.
I'm telling you, it is so much more enjoyable doing. I really don't mind doing roof steel, because it's flat. It's relatively flat, and it just, you can walk along. But having a telehandler with a big metal platform to lay your steel on, it just takes all the stress out of it. Now, I will say this, you have to wait for a day where it is not windy. You don't want to try to do this in 15, 25 mile an hour winds, because that piece of steel will set sail and you aren't stopping it. So you kind of have to time that out too, look at the weather. There's been builds where we've started like at daylight to try to get the roof on. So we'll lay all the sheets, put a row of screws across the top, the bottom, and in the middle, and then we'll get it all on, and then we'll come back and screw it all off. So that is something you have to consider when you're putting your roof metal on, is how windy is it? Because if it's super windy, you're just not going to be able to do it, and it's definitely not safe. I mean, we've had, I think it was at Nor's, we tried to go one day, and it took a piece of metal right off the lift. Now I have figured out some jigs to put over my steel, so if a gust of wind comes, it can't peel it off. I don't know if we have any. We probably have those on some videos, maybe some pictures or something we could post, just as a precaution, so it can't peel off your steel off your pile. My house, I did one at a time. I was by myself, and as you can see, I had that basket there that was it was a self-leveling kind of a system I had going on. And I didn't want to scratch the steel, so I did one at a time. Now, if you have a telehandler where you can lift it up high enough, if you pull it off straight, you're not going to scratch the steel. But those are all things to consider, I guess.
Well, no, this is really pretty. This is some of my favorite drone.
Any questions you have, Justin? Oh yeah, that looks good, doesn't it?
Screws in the valley and
Oh yeah.
ribs.
So a question that Justin just brought up that we literally get all the time is, and there's big arguments about this, is whether you should screw your exposed fastener steel in the flats or on the ridge. And I would say most steel manufacturers are going to have an option for both. I screw in the flats. And the reason I do that is because I want that metal to be in intimate contact with the wood to create a nice tight contact between the steel and the wood. Because if you think about going through the ribs, there's a gap in how tight do you tighten that screw. So if you tighten it too much, it'll pop the steel up. So are you really getting the shear value out of the steel panel that you need? And it's very difficult to do that perfect. Where if it's in the flats, you have that rubber washer put on there properly, it's not going to leak. So that's kind of my thing, is I would go off whatever your steel manufacturer says. I would say most of them have an option for either in the flat or on the ribs. I would say most of the builders I know, go in the flats. It just creates a better contact between the panel and the lumber. But you can do it either way. Yeah, we can go into this one. I think this is all just soffit and fascia. And right off the bat, if you're looking underneath the overhang here, you'll see the FJ trim. And one of the most important things that I can tell you is, before you put on your FJ, is wrap your building. Because what I found is, if you do your FJ first, you have to tape your house wrap to that trim. And if you get really windy days, it's going to peel it off. And then once that gets peeled off, it'll start whipping in the wind and it'll kind of shred it. Where if you put your house wrap up first, then that trim goes over the house wrap and it stays. So that's one change I've made since I've done this, is I always put my house wrap up before any of that trim gets up, because the trim will actually help keep it in place. Because if you're self-building, it's probably going to take you longer. It's not like you're going to put all this trim up and then the same day you're going to have all your side steel up. I mean, maybe you will, but I highly doubt it. So just keep that in mind. That is something I do different. You will spend time fixing your house wrap if you don't. Vented soffit and non-vented soffit. I ran vented soffit around my eaves and my gables. Typically, you run it along your eaves and then you use non-vented on your gables. I think any way you do it, your roof's going to breathe just fine. We have a vented ridge. Trying to think what else we could talk about here.
Do you need Do you need vented if you're gonna do closed cell?
No, so that's a good point, Justin. If you are going to spray in your whole structure, you want to use non-vented soffit on your eaves and your gable ends. And you actually, like, if you can see in between these purlins right here, you're going to want to block that in. And the easiest time to do that is before you put your steel on, because you could just cut your 2x4 blocks between your girts, put them on that end truss, screw them in, and then that's already sealed off for when your spray foam comes in.
Yeah.
Versus having to do it later is going to be much more difficult.
Yeah, which we found that a lot of people are still at this point debating their insulation options. And so word of caution is that you want to have already debated it and made your final decision. This isn't the time to like change your mind.
No, because this is a very, like, you're exactly right, because you could block this in before your steel goes on, which life's gonna be much easier. And then on your eaves, you're gonna also have to take plywood and cover that gap between your top girt and your roof and get that so the spray foam has something to go up. And that's gonna be way easier to do in this phase versus doing it from the inside later. So stop overthinking things. Y'all overthink everything.
Yeah.
Another thing, I house wrap all of our gable ends, even in the attic, because again, like, if that air in your unvented attic can contact your steel, there's the chance that you can get frost there. So we run house wrap all the way up our gable ends, as well as the sidewalls.
I think for most self-builders, just kind of speaking here, trims is probably the hardest.
Yes.
Cutting big sheets of metal prizing is hard, but getting your trims cut is probably the hardest to learn to do.
Yeah, I would say trims are probably the framing part of your build is going to be the most manageable. The metal and the trims are gonna kind of make or break your building, and that's true for most builders as well.
Yes.
Like there's a lot. I mean, I would say probably over 50% of the builders struggle with quality metal and trim work. So
Yeah, so don't feel discouraged if you feel like this is super hard and I can't seem to get it right. I mean, because you're not alone in that. But what would you advise? Is there a way that, like, do you advise that somebody order a couple extra pieces of metal and practice doing stuff? Or like, how would you recommend that somebody set themselves up to having an easier time?
yeah, I mean, that doesn't hurt. Like, to order a couple extra pieces of J trim for around your windows and have like a practice. It would help if a YouTuber would make some really quality videos. Yeah, this is where like a complete step-by-step, like,
I mean,
I guess this is the time to ask Justin, do you want to stay in my camper with me in Albia a couple days a week while I build Prukas?
Yeah, I mean,
and get that done?
yeah.
So-
I think that'd be a highly beneficial video, is to walk through the detail.
Like, just re-detail the whole process, like, where it's just me and you, and I'm not trying to manage employees.
Yeah.
The only problem is that one's an hour and a half away.
Because if I'm building mine, that's probably like, I'm freaked out about learning how to do that. If you've never done metal work, I mean, that is intimidating, and you want to get that right, especially around your windows.
Yeah, and this is not just. There's a lot of builders that struggle with this. I was just meeting with Delta Metals, and they asked me if I would be willing to teach. They want to have an event where they have builders come in because they want to improve the metal and trim work. So it's not, and it really comes down just to, like having somebody show you how to do it and then practicing it. So if we created some really short videos, that'd probably be really beneficial.
Yeah, and speed can't be your priority with this part.
No, especially around windows, you just want to do a really good job. And there's things that I've learned in a lot of this you learn over time, right? So I know that if I'm doing an 18-inch overhang, all of my soffit I have it cut a 1/4 inch short. That way if there's any, I mean, it's almost impossible to have a perfectly straight, like where, I mean, it doesn't vary at all. So like these are things you learn over time and how to correct them and how to deal with them. So I guess that's something that like the best option is if we would just create some really quality step-by-step videos.
Yeah, so one of the things that we have been wanting to do for about a year now, and just time and opportunity really hasn't presented itself, is to create.
Well, and it's also very difficult when you're paying employees.
Yes, yeah. So
to take the time to slow down. And,
right. The way that we are operating our builds, we just didn't have the opportunity to do this, but we've been wanting to create a step-by-step video guide that accompanies our post-frame plans that will show you these details so that you can see them in real time. So a short, it's not highly edited. It's literally showing you how it gets done. And that's going to be a huge assistance to people that have bought our plans in the past, that are going to be buying them in the future, to have that guide of short videos to show you how to perfect these different tasks. And
yeah, I think that'd be a really good idea.
yeah,
I think it'd be a game changer.
Also, they call it rough framing, but the rougher your framing is, the harder it is to trim. So,
yeah.
Right, and and that goes back to the beginning of having a properly prepared pad, which helps you get a square foundation. If your foundation isn't square, you're going to struggle
The whole time.
You're going to struggle the whole time, because if your foundation, if the four corners of your building aren't square, you can only get one side of your roof square. You will never be able to get both sides square. Mm-hmm. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible for those of you who believe that math never lies. It's impossible to get both your sides of your roof square if your four corners of your building aren't square. So it is rough framing, but you want to do a quality job.
Yeah, and that's something that I think could be a misconception when you see building crews come in and they seem to get the building up and everything like that, is that if you're DIYing this, it's even more critical because you don't necessarily have the years of experience and the ability to troubleshoot some of these. And how do you compensate for something like that? So that's why for a DIYer, it's even more important.
Well, and if you think about traditional building, your exterior has mostly horizontal lines, so if your building's not perfectly square, that's a lot easier to hide than a vertical line, which everything on the steel is vertical. So like if your building's not perfectly plumb and your steel's going, or you're not running your steel plumb, when it runs along your window trim, you're going to see that it's not straight. So, you're not probably going to be perfect, but you can get pretty close where nobody's ever going to notice. And that's just building in general. I would say if everybody went around to their house, even if it's a stick frame, and you started checking the squares of your rooms, they're probably going to be off a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the DIYers that we've interacted with, I think that, budget is probably the main reason that somebody takes on a DIY build, but then the ability to really do a good job, that's probably a close second in people's priority list. That they want, that's why you want to do things on your own, is because you don't want to leave that up to somebody else.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave your fate of these videos up to Emily, whether she wants to be left alone for weeks at a time while I do these detailed videos.
Well, I would say that at this point in our lives, that's a lot more feasible and a lot less stressful to do that, to be on my own, than it was when we were filming these videos. This was published about 4.5 years ago. And so, yeah, not having anybody in diapers, having everybody go to school during the day. Yeah, getting to sleep through the night. Those are all huge factors that make being alone a lot less stressful now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a new set of tools, obviously. You probably want to talk about nibblers, snips.
So I guess as tools in this video, putting the roof on, it's going to be pretty. You need your drill. string line to make sure your fascia straight. And that's a whole nother thing that I didn't cover in here is squaring the building, because I did it by myself, and it's literally impossible to film that and show it.
When you say drill, is there a certain type of drill to not over tighten, or what would you recommend?
I mean, even an impact drill nowadays has different settings. Like it has a 1, 2, and a 3, so you can set it so you're not like cranking them down. The biggest thing when you're tightening your screws, you want to be able to read that washer. As soon as that washer starts to expand out, that's tight enough. You don't want it to where it's bulging out, and you don't want it too loose where the washer can spin. You need a good set of snips, which we can put a link for the snips that I use. A good nibbler is really good. A double shear is good. A single shear is good. Kind of what I use nowadays is I always have a good set of sharp snips. I use my nibbler for cross cuts over the ribs. There's no other tool that's gonna do as good a job unless you have a shear that can do, and no DIYer is gonna buy a $2,000 shear for their job. And then double cut shear is what I'll usually make my long rips with, because you can get really straight cuts with that. And then as far as putting your soffit in, you can use your sheet metal screws, you can use trim metal screws. We've used a narrow crown stapler to put those in. So there's lots of different options there. I mean, I can show people how to put house wrap up by themselves, and you can sit there and laugh and enjoy your time.
So yeah, that wraps up the metal roof for the house part of our build. The garage will be coming up later on. But
and there's some errors I made on the garage. So we got to replace a couple, well, don't replace them, but we got to move a couple footings back into position. We're going to talk about the retaining wall I built and why it failed. I know there's going to be a lot of people on Facebook that are going to love the fact that it failed. It's a real simple answer why it failed.
yeah, but we'll save that for later, because we're actually going to talk about window framing. You went ahead and you wrapped the house part, you got the windows installed and stuff, so that's a lot of fun to watch.
Yep, so that'll be the next video, window boxes and house wrap and that kind of good stuff. But as always, we appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share us with your friends, and we will catch you on the next video.